My phone started vibrating before sunrise. Not ringing. Vibrating. A slow, angry buzz across the marble kitchen counter. I watched it for a long time before answering. The screen showed her name. My daughter-in-law. When I picked up, she didn't even say hello. "If you want to join Thanksgiving," she snapped over the phone, "come wash the dishes." For a moment, I thought I misheard her. The words hung in the quiet kitchen like smoke. I leaned back in the chair. Outside the window, morning fog crawled over the lake. The house was silent. Too silent. "Excuse me?" I said. "You heard me," she continued, irritation sharpening every word. "Everyone's bringing something. If you want to sit at the table, you can at least help clean." The arrogance in her voice was almost impressive. Almost. I said nothing for a few seconds. Silence makes greedy people nervous. Then I simply replied, "Enjoy," and hung up. No anger, no argument, just one word. I placed the phone back on the counter and watched the fog dissolve over the water. Because at that exact moment, I was standing inside my private villa in Switzerland, the house she believed I could never afford, the house she believed she would one day inherit, a house her lover was already trying to steal from me. Upstairs, in the guest room of my American home thousands of miles away, my wife's cousin was probably still asleep. The man who wasn't her cousin, the man who thought he was smarter than me, the man forging documents to steal my fortune. I smiled faintly. People think revenge begins with anger. They're wrong. Revenge begins with patience, and I had been patient for months. The first crack appeared 6 months earlier. My wife, Laura, mentioned her cousin Daniel during dinner. "Just for a few weeks," she said casually. "He's going through a rough time." I barely looked up from my wine. Of course. Daniel arrived with a suitcase and a polite smile. He shook my hand too firmly. Men who shake hands like that usually have something to prove. At first, everything was normal. Too normal. He was helpful, friendly, always respectful. But I noticed small things. Laura laughing a little too softly when he spoke. Doors closing when I entered rooms. Late-night whispers drifting down the hallway. I told myself I was imagining things. After 30 years of marriage, suspicion feels like betrayal itself. But the house began to change. Daniel started asking strange questions. About my investments. About the trust accounts. About the property titles. "Just curious," he said one evening. Curious people rarely ask about legal ownership structures. Then one night I walked into my study unexpectedly. Daniel was sitting at my computer. He closed the screen too quickly. "Looking for the printer," he said. Of course, the printer. That night I lay awake beside Laura. She slept peacefully. Or pretended to, and for the first time in decades, I felt something cold enter my chest. Not jealousy, calculation. I didn't confront them. People reveal everything when they believe they are safe, so I let them feel safe. I became predictable, routine, harmless. Meanwhile, I started collecting information. Phone records first. Laura's calls to Daniel increased whenever I traveled. Then emails. A private investigator retrieved copies from Daniel's accounts. What I read removed the last piece of doubt. They weren't cousins. They were lovers, and they were planning something far more ambitious than an affair. They believed I was dying. My minor heart attack last year had convinced them my time was short. Daniel's messages were disturbingly confident. "We just need the property transfer papers before he dies," Laura replied with a smiling emoji. I studied those emails for a long time. Then came the forged documents. Daniel had hired a shady notary. They were preparing to transfer ownership of several investment accounts, including the Swiss property, my property, the villa I had quietly purchased months earlier. The irony made me laugh out loud. They were trying to steal something they didn't even understand. So I gave them exactly what they wanted: opportunity. I accidentally left financial files accessible. I mentioned traveling overseas. I pretended to trust Daniel with certain errands. And finally, exactly as predicted, he scheduled a meeting at the bank to finalize the transfer. What Daniel didn't know was that the documents he planned to present were very real, very convincing, and very illegal, because I had replaced them myself with perfect forgeries, the kind that attract federal attention. The morning of the bank meeting, I flew to Switzerland, not because I needed to, because I wanted distance. Revenge is cleaner when you're not in the room. At 2:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from my investigator. FBI arrived. Perfect timing. Daniel had walked into the bank with forged property transfers and falsified signatures, a federal crime. 2 agents waited until the paperwork reached the manager's desk. Then they stepped in. Fraud, forgery, attempted financial theft. Laura was there too. According to the report, she cried. Daniel didn't. He just stared at the agents like a man realizing gravity exists. The investigator sent photos, handcuffs, confusion, panic. I saved them quietly. Evidence has its uses. 2 days later, my phone began ringing. Again, and again, and again. 71 missed calls. All from my daughter-in-law. Curious. I opened social media. Someone had posted photos of my Swiss villa. The lake, the marble terraces, the infinity pool overlooking the mountains. Apparently, the family had just discovered the truth. I answered the 72nd call. Her voice trembled. You never told us about Switzerland. No one asked, I said calmly. We should talk, she rushed. About Thanksgiving. I looked out across the lake. The water was perfectly still. Did you enjoy washing the dishes? I asked. Silence. Then a weak laugh. I didn't mean it like that. Of course she didn't. People rarely mean their cruelty until consequences arrive. I'm very busy, I told her. With what? Peace. Then I sent her the photos. Daniel in handcuffs, Laura crying beside him, the police car. Her breathing stopped. I ended the call before she could speak. Betrayal doesn't break you. It clarifies things. In Switzerland, the air feels clean, sharp, honest. There are no whispers in the hallway, no closed doors, no greedy relatives waiting for inheritance, just silence. I sold the American house last week. Laura will learn about the divorce through her lawyer. Daniel will learn about prison through his judge. And the family who treated me like an inconvenience at Thanksgiving will learn something else. Respect usually arrives too late. I turned off my phone and watched the sun disappear behind the mountains. Some people believe revenge must be loud, explosive, dramatic. They're wrong. The best revenge is simply removing yourself from the story they were trying to steal.